Welcome back to Simple Truth, where we're looking at the story of David. We just finished 1 Samuel chapter 7, talking about David and Goliath. Now we're moving into chapter 18. We're going to talk about David and Jonathan, friendship. Right? What happens when you develop a friendship that is godly in nature? So let's start with verse 1. It says this: as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit, right, to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Like, there is something spiritual about this whole thing, right? And God is about twos. We've seen this in the Bible over and over and over, right? That God loves the concept of twos. It's why there's an armor bearer for everybody who's fighting. It's why the disciples were sent out in two. It's why Paul had a second person with him all the time. And now we see here that God is prepping David, but knows that David's going to need a two, going to need somebody else to support him. Right? Somebody to invest in him, somebody to love on him in the hard times. God knows what's coming ahead. And so what he does is he knits, right, the soul of Jonathan and David together, right? There's a second part to this. We know how it's supposed to work. Jonathan is going to take over after his dad. So if there isn't going to be some major problems here, war, the loss of life, and all of these kind of things, somehow God's got to make it so that Jonathan understands, gets God's plan trumps man's plan. That's a hard thing. That's a super, super hard thing for most of us to do, right? Most of us have a really hard time understanding that God's plan trumps our understanding. Yet that's simply truth, a simple truth, right? God's plan, what he has in store for us, trumps whatever it is that we think might make sense for us. It's why people then have to make hard choices, but it's how people are able to make hard choices. Ever made that choice between 2, 3, 4, 7 jobs, right? Situations, churches, all that kind of stuff. Right? How do you make that? When everybody else is saying, you should do this, you should take this, how do you make the choice? Right? We recognize that God's plan trumps. Right? God's plan trumps our plan. God's trump plans what we have in store for ourselves. We have a plan for us to prosper, for nothing bad to ever happen to us. God has a plan for us to prosper, but maybe through bad things, maybe through hard things. So he brings people up alongside. So we see this, that from the very beginning in verse 1, this Jonathan and David relationship is about Jonathan and David. They're going to build a friendship. That's great. They're going to benefit from it, but it's ordained by God. You want to be in relationships that are God-centered, right? But also God-ordained. What God has put together, let nobody asunder. We just use that for marriage, right? But it's the same concept. God's constantly telling people, don't, right? Don't come after my anointed, what I have put together. Don't do it. Don't separate it. Don't do all of those things. And we need to be careful that we're not actually fighting God's plan for this whole thing. On verse 2, right, it says, and Saul took him that day, would not let him return to his father's house. So again, now we've got David already been anointed, already beaten up a giant, already faced the enemies of God, already becoming a man of God. And now David's about ready to enter some training. Right? He's about ready to enter the training program of God. Now, we've seen this before in the people like Joseph, where we wouldn't have picked this way. Like, again, do you think Saul wanted his replacement? If he had known that, do you think he wants his replacement in the castle, in anywhere near him? No, he isn't going to want that. But Saul at this point doesn't know what's going on. Right? Do you think that Pharaoh would have been okay with Moses coming in, and if he knew that Moses was going to lead all the people out of Egypt, their whole workforce? No, Pharaoh would have never okayed that, right? Sometimes God does things right underneath our noses that we're not aware of. If he told us the whole plan, we'd be like, no, I'm not going to be friends with that person. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bring this person on staff. They're going to take over for me. Well, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm not going to help this person at work. They're going to get my job. I'm not going to do this. Do you think there's ever opportunities where God's preparing you to prepare the person that you're dating or your friendships for somebody else? Or maybe he's using you in preparation for what he has down the road. So let me leave you with this simple truth, right? Has God ordained your relationships? Right? Is he putting people together with you that are going to help you get to where you're supposed to be? Or are you just looking around and going, hey, I think this person could help me. I think this situation could help me. This church, this business, this place, this house. Let God put things together. Let him knit things together in the soul. That's what you want to do in life if you want to be a part of God's purpose, God's plan. Hey, we'll see you next time. Simple truth.